Captain Lee Hyun stared at the vast emptiness of space through the main window of his ship. The stars looked different out here, far from Earth's warm yellow sun. His ship, the Harmony, had been traveling for 3 months now. It was humanity's first real journey beyond their own solar system. Lee felt the weight of history on his shoulders. Every human back on Earth was watching and waiting for news from this mission. Dr. Park So-young walked onto the bridge carrying her tablet. She had been studying star maps for hours, trying to understand the strange signals they had been picking up. The signals seemed to follow patterns, but not like anything humans had ever seen before. They were too organized to be natural, but too alien to be easily understood. "Captain," So-young said, "I think we are getting close to the source of those signals." Her voice was calm, but Lee could hear the excitement underneath. This could be it. This could be first contact with another intelligent species. Commander Kim Tae-ho looked up from his station. He had been quiet all morning, checking and rechecking their weapons systems. Not because he wanted to fight, but because he wanted to be ready for anything. "Sir, our long-range sensors are picking up multiple ships approaching our position. They are big, much bigger than ours." Lee felt his heart beat faster. After all the years of wondering if humans were alone in the universe, they were about to get their answer. "How many ships?" he asked. "At least 6, maybe more," Tae-ho replied. "They are moving in formation like a military fleet." So-young moved to her own station and began working quickly. "I am trying to send a peaceful greeting message on all frequencies. Maybe they will understand that we come in peace." The alien ships appeared on their main screen. They were beautiful in a strange way, with smooth curves and a silver color that seemed to shimmer. But they were also clearly built for war. Weapons ports lined their sides, and energy shields glowed around their hulls. "Incoming transmission," called out the communications officer. The main screen changed to show a face that was clearly not human. The alien had blue-gray skin, large yellow eyes, and what looked like small tentacles where a human would have hair. When it spoke, the universal translator tried to make sense of the sounds, but the words came out broken and unclear. "Attention. Primitive vessel. You have entered Valari space. Prepare for an inspection." Lee stepped forward. "This is Captain Lee Hyun of the Earthship Harmony. We come in peace and wish to establish friendly contact with your people." The alien on the screen looked confused. It turned to speak with others who Lee could not see, making sounds that the translator could not handle at all. When it turned back, its expression had changed. It looked almost annoyed. "Beasts do not speak," the alien said. The translation was clearer now. "You will be contained for study. Do not resist, or you will be destroyed." Before Lee could respond, the transmission ended. The alien ships moved closer, and Lee could see smaller craft launching from their bays. These looked like boarding ships. "Captain, what are your orders?" Tae-ho asked. His hand was hovering over the weapons controls. Lee thought quickly. They were outnumbered and outgunned. Fighting would mean death for his entire crew, but surrendering felt wrong too. "Stand down weapons," he said finally. "We will comply with their boarding, but stay alert." So-young looked shocked. "Sir, they called us beasts. I do not think they understand that we are intelligent." "I know," Lee said, "but if we fight now, we will never get the chance to show them they are wrong." The alien boarding craft attached to the Harmony with a loud clang. Lee could hear cutting tools working on their hull. Within minutes, the airlock opened and alien soldiers poured in. They were tall, maybe 7 feet, and wore armor that covered their entire bodies. They moved like they were expecting dangerous animals, not people. The leader of the boarding party looked around the bridge with what seemed like surprise. It spoke into a device on its wrist, using sounds that the translator could not understand. Then it pointed at Lee and the others. "You will come," it said in broken English. "Resistance means death." Lee held up his hands to show he was not armed. "We will cooperate, but please understand we are not animals. We are intelligent beings from the planet Earth." The alien soldier tilted its head like it was listening to something annoying. It made a sound that might have been laughter. "Clever beasts," it said. "You mimic speech well, but beasts you remain." More soldiers entered the bridge. They were carrying what looked like stun weapons and some kind of glowing restraints. One of them approached So Young, who backed away slowly. "Do not harm them," Lee said loudly. "We will do what you want, but do not hurt my crew." The alien leader looked at him with interest. "Pack loyalty," it said to another soldier. "Strong alpha behavior. The researchers will find this fascinating." Lee realized with growing horror that the aliens really did think humans were just animals. Smart animals, maybe, but animals nonetheless. They were not prepared for first contact with intelligent life. They were prepared to capture specimens for a zoo. The soldiers began putting the glowing restraints on the human crew. The restraints did not hurt, but they made Lee feel weak and dizzy. Some kind of pacification field, he guessed. One by one, his crew was led away to the alien boarding craft. As they walked through the corridors of the alien ship, Lee tried to observe everything. The technology was clearly advanced, but not impossibly so. The aliens seemed to use a lot of biological components mixed with mechanical ones. Their ship felt more grown than built. They were brought to what looked like a holding area. The walls were transparent, and Lee could see other prisoners in nearby cells. Some looked like humans, but others were clearly from different worlds. All of them looked defeated. Admiral Vextar stood in the observation deck watching the new specimens through the transparent wall. This was the third species this month that showed signs of tool use and pack coordination. The galaxy seemed full of clever beasts these days. Scholar Quindal stood beside the Admiral, taking notes on a bio-tablet. "The leader specimen shows remarkable vocal mimicry," Quindal said. "And did you see how it tried to protect the others? Classic alpha behavior." "Yes," Vextar agreed, "but also concerning. These Earth beasts might be more dangerous than we." First thought, their ship showed sophisticated technology. If they can learn to use tools this advanced— "Sir," interrupted a communications officer, "we are receiving a transmission from the homeworld. The Galactic Council wants a full report on the Earth creatures." Vexitar was not surprised. Ever since the long-range observations had begun, there had been debate about Earth's dominant species. Some scientists argued that the creatures showed signs of civilization, but the Council had ruled them Class 7 primitive beasts based on their violent behavior and lack of true interstellar travel. "Tell the Council we have specimens for study," Vextar said. "The Science Division can determine their true nature." In the holding cell, Lee sat with his crew and tried to think of a plan. They were alive, which was good, but they were also prisoners of beings who refused to see them as equals. Somehow, they had to prove their intelligence. "Captain," So Young whispered, "I have been listening to their conversations. Their language has patterns I can work with. Maybe I can find a way to communicate properly." "Do it," Lee said. "Our lives may depend on it." The Harmony continued its journey now as cargo aboard the Volari research vessel. Earth's first contact with alien life had not gone as anyone had planned, but Lee refused to give up hope. Humans had faced impossible situations before and found a way through them. He just had to make sure they lived long enough to prove what they really were. The research station was massive, bigger than any structure humans had ever built in space. It floated in the darkness between two gas giant planets, its biomechanical hull pulsing with soft light. Inside, thousands of alien scientists worked to understand the many forms of life they had collected from across the galaxy. Dr. Park So-young found herself in what could only be described as a luxury prison. The habitat was large, maybe the size of a small park back on Earth. It had artificial grass, trees that looked almost real, and even a small stream running through the middle. The ceiling showed a projection of an alien sky with two purple suns casting strange shadows. Engineer Oh Jinwoo knelt beside the stream, examining the technology that made the water flow. "This is incredible," he said quietly to So-young. "Look at how they integrated the pump system directly into the artificial rock. It is so seamless you cannot tell where the technology ends and the decoration begins." Jinwoo, So Young warned. Be careful what you touch. We do not know if they are watching us. They were definitely being watched. Through the transparent walls, So Young could see alien scientists with bio-tablets, recording everything the humans did. The scientists wore white robes that seemed to shift color depending on their mood. Right now, most of them showed the blue-green pattern that seemed to indicate curiosity. Pilot Choi Mi-ran sat by herself near the artificial trees. She was the youngest member of the crew, only 24 years old. This was supposed to be her first real space mission, a chance to see the stars and maybe make history. Instead, she was a specimen in an alien zoo. Captain Lee walked over and sat beside her. How are you holding up, Mi-ran? I keep thinking about my family, she said. My parents were so proud when I got selected for this mission. What will they think when we do not come home? We will get home, Lee said firmly. I promise you that. Dr. Kethmeran observed the specimens from the main observation deck. The Earth creatures were fascinating. They showed complex social behaviors, tool manipulation, skills, and what almost looked like emotional responses. But of course, many animals could mimic such things. Notice how the alpha male comforts the younger female, Kethmeran said to his assistant. Classic pack bonding behavior. And see how the technician examines our habitat systems? Impressive. Curiosity drive. The assistant, a younger scientist named Rolvek, looked less certain. Doctor, some of their vocalizations seem very organized. Are we sure they are just animal sounds? Kethmeran made a dismissive gesture with his tentacles. Clever mimicry, nothing more. Many species can produce complex sounds. That does not make them language. Curator Zalthus entered the observation area, her robes showing the golden pattern of authority. She was responsible for all the specimens on the station, and Earth creatures were her newest prize. How are our new additions adapting? She asked. Very well, Kethmeran replied. Better than expected, actually. They show remarkable resilience and social cooperation. I think they will make excellent long-term specimens. Inside the habitat, Oh Jin-woo had made an interesting discovery. While examining the water system, he had found access panels hidden in the artificial rocks. The technology inside was advanced but not impossible to understand. More importantly, he realized he could modify it. So Young, he called quietly, come look at this. She walked over, trying to look casual for the watching scientists. What did you find? The environmental controls, he whispered. I think I can adjust them, maybe even access their computer systems. Is that wise? She asked. If they catch you tampering with their equipment? They think we are animals, Jin-woo replied. Animals do not sabotage technology. They might not even realize what I am doing. Meanwhile, Mi-ran had started doing something that would change everything. She was drawing in the soft dirt near the stream. At first, it looked like random scratches, the kind any creature might make. But slowly, patterns emerged. She drew a circle, then divided it into equal parts. She drew triangles with equal sides. She drew the mathematical symbol for pi and began calculating its value, marking each digit in the dirt. Commander Kim Tae-ho noticed what she was doing and came over to watch. Mi-ran, what are you thinking? Mathematics is universal, she said, continuing to draw. If anything can prove we are intelligent, it is this. She moved on to prime numbers, listing them in sequence. Then the Fibonacci sequence, each number clearly marked. She drew geometric proofs that any scientific civilization would recognize. In the observation deck, Rolvek noticed the activity. Dr. Kethmeran, you should see this. The young female is making marks in the substrate. Kethmeran looked through the viewing instruments and focused on Mi-ran's work. At first he saw only scratches in the dirt, but as he watched, patterns became visible. Mathematical patterns. Interesting, he murmured. Tool manipulation combined with pattern recognition. Some Earth animals must use mathematics for navigation or food gathering. But Rolvek was studying the patterns more carefully. He recognized the geometric proofs from his own education. These were not simple navigation aids. These were advanced mathematical concepts, the kind taught in universities. Doctor, Rolvek said slowly, I think these patterns are more complex than animal navigation. Look at this sequence here. These are prime numbers. Kethmiran examined the dirt patterns again, this time more carefully. The scratches did indeed show prime numbers, calculated correctly and in perfect sequence. But that was impossible. Animals did not understand mathematics. Coincidence, he said finally. Or perhaps instinctive pattern recognition taken to an extreme. Some birds can count after all. But even as he said it, Kethmiran felt doubt creeping into his mind. He had studied animal behavior for decades, and he had never seen anything quite like this. So Young watched Miran work and felt a surge of hope. This was brilliant. Mathematics was indeed universal. Any intelligent species would recognize what Miran was doing. The question was whether these aliens would let themselves see it. Jinwoo continued his careful work on the environmental systems. He had managed to access a diagnostic interface, and what he found there amazed him. The alien technology was sophisticated, but it followed logical principles he could understand. More than that, he began to see ways it could be improved. Working carefully, he made small adjustments to the habitat's lighting system. Nothing dramatic, just subtle improvements to the spectrum and intensity. To the watching scientists, it would look like random tinkering. But the changes he made would actually make the habitat more comfortable for humans. Captain Lee noticed the lighting change and understood what Jinwoo was doing. His engineer was not just examining the technology, he was improving it. The question was whether the aliens would notice, and if they did, how they would interpret it. Days passed in the habitat. The humans settled into a routine, always watched by their alien captors. Miran continued her mathematical drawings, creating more and more complex proofs in the dirt. Jinwoo worked on understanding and improving their prison systems. So Young studied the aliens who watched them, trying to understand their language and behavior patterns. More scientists came to observe the humans. Word was spreading through the research station about the unusual Earth specimens. Some came expecting to see clever animals performing tricks. Others came with growing suspicion that something important was being missed. Dr. Kethmiran found himself spending more and more time studying the humans. Their behavior was unlike any animal he had ever observed. They showed problem-solving abilities that seemed almost intelligent. But that was impossible. The Galactic Council had classified them as Class 7 primitive beasts. The Council did not make mistakes about such things. Late one night, when most of the station was in sleep cycle, Rolvek came to find his mentor. Doctor, I have been analyzing the mathematical patterns the young female creates. I have run them through our computers, and the results are troubling. What kind of results? Kethmiran asked, though he was not sure he wanted to know. The mathematics are perfect, Rolvek said. Not just correct, but elegant. These are not the random scratches of an animal. These are the deliberate calculations of a trained mathematician. Kethmiran stared at the data on Rolvek's tablet. The evidence was there, clear and undeniable. But accepting it would mean admitting that everything they believed about the Earth creatures was wrong. It would mean admitting that the Galactic Council had made a terrible mistake. We need more data, he said finally. Keep observing. Say nothing to anyone else until we are certain. In the habitat, the humans continued their careful work. They were prisoners, but they were not helpless. Slowly, carefully, they were proving what they really were. The question was whether anyone would listen when the time came to speak. Dr. Park So-young had been watching the aliens for weeks now, and she was beginning to understand something important. The Valari did not just communicate with sounds like humans did. When they talked to each other, she noticed small electrical fields around their heads, tiny sparks of energy that seemed to carry meaning. Jinwoo, she whispered to the engineer, I need your help with something. Can you detect electrical fields? Jinwoo looked up from the environmental console he had been studying. What kind of fields? Bioelectric. I think the aliens use them to communicate. That might be why they cannot understand us properly. Our words are just noise to them because we do not have the electrical component. Jinwoo thought about this for a moment. If that is true, Then maybe I can build something to help. I have been learning how their technology works. It is mostly biomechanical, but the principles are similar to ours. Meanwhile, high above Earth, another human ship was preparing for its own journey into space. Captain No Yunji stood on the bridge of the Defiance, humanity's second interstellar vessel. 3 months had passed since the Harmony had left Earth, and there had been no word from Captain Lee's mission. "Ma'am," called her communications officer, "we have finished tracking the Harmony's last known course. The trail leads toward the Valari system." Yunji nodded. She had been afraid of this. The Valari were known to the few alien traders who visited Earth's outer system. They were described as powerful but not particularly friendly to new species. "How long to reach their territory?" 2 weeks at maximum speed, her navigator replied. "Then we leave now," Yunji decided. "If Captain Lee and his crew are in trouble, they need our help." Back on the Valari research station, the humans had become the most studied specimens in the facility. Dr. Kethamiran spent most of his time observing them, and what he saw was causing him to question everything he had been taught about intelligence. The young female, Miran, had moved beyond simple mathematics. She was now drawing complex physics, equations in the dirt, energy-matter conversion formulas, quantum mechanics principles, even theoretical faster-than-light travel calculations. No animal could do this. But if they were not animals, then what were they? "Rolvek," Kethamiran called to his assistant. "Have you analyzed the latest patterns?" "Yes, doctor," Rolvek replied, his voice troubled. "They show understanding of advanced physics that rivals our own universities, and the male who works on our systems. He has actually improved their efficiency by 12%. Kethamiran felt a chill run through his body. "Improved them? How?" "He modified the lighting spectrum to better match his species' visual range, but in doing so, he also optimized the energy distribution. Our own engineers had not thought of his solution. This was becoming impossible to ignore. Animals did not improve alien technology. Animals did not solve advanced mathematics. But accepting what this meant would shake the foundation of everything the Valari believed about intelligence. In the habitat, So-Young and Jin-Woo worked together on their secret project. Using components salvaged from the environmental systems, Jin-Woo was building a device that could detect and generate bioelectric fields. It was delicate work, and they had to be careful not to attract attention. "The field generator is almost ready," Jin-Woo whispered. "But I need to understand their bioelectric patterns better. Can you figure out how their communication works?" So-Young had been studying the aliens for weeks, learning to read their electrical signals. "I think I understand the basics. Their emotions and thoughts create different electrical patterns. When they are curious, the field pulses in a specific way. When they are excited, it changes frequency." Captain Lee watched his crew work and felt proud of their determination. Even as prisoners, they were proving human ingenuity and intelligence, but he also worried about time. How long would the aliens keep them as specimens, and what would happen when other humans came looking for them? His question was answered sooner than expected. Alert signals began sounding throughout the research station. In the observation deck, Curator Zalthes received urgent reports from her security chief. "Ma'am," the security officer said, "our long-range sensors have detected another Earth vessel approaching our territory. It is broadcasting messages in the same sounds the specimens make." Zalthes felt confusion and growing alarm. "Another ship? But Earth beasts do not have interstellar travel capability." "Apparently they do, ma'am. The vessel is large and heavily armed. It is demanding the return of the specimens from the first ship." This changed everything. If the Earth creatures had multiple starships, if they could make demands and threats, then they were not simple beasts at all, but the implications of that were staggering. Admiral Vexitar was called to the station to handle the crisis. When he arrived, he found his scientists in chaos. Some were insisting the Earth creatures were still just clever animals. Others were beginning to suspect something much more serious. "What is the status of the specimens?" Vexitar asked. Dr. Kethamiran hesitated before answering. "Admiral, I believe we may have made an error in classification. The Earth creatures show signs of true intelligence, complex mathematics, technology improvement, organized social structures? Impossible, Vextar said firmly. The Galactic Council does not make mistakes about intelligence classification. But even as he said it, Vextar felt doubt. He had read the reports about the approaching Earth ship. Animals did not build starships. Animals did not make organized demands for the return of their pack members. In the habitat, the humans sensed the growing tension around them. More aliens were coming to observe them, and the conversations seemed more urgent. Captain Lee gathered his crew together. "Something is happening," he said quietly. "I think another human ship might be coming to find us." "The Defiance," Commander Tejo said immediately. "Captain No would not leave us out here." So Young looked at her bioelectric translator device. Jin Woo had finished the hardware, and she had programmed it with everything she had learned about Valari communication. It was ready, but using it would reveal their true nature. There would be no going back. "Captain," she said, "I think I can make them understand us, really understand us. But once I do, everything changes." Lee nodded slowly. "Do it. It is time they knew what we really are." The moment came when Admiral Vextar entered the habitat area to personally examine the specimens. He wanted to see for himself what had his scientists so confused. As he approached the transparent wall, So Young activated her device. For the first time, Captain Lee's voice reached the aliens not as meaningless animal sounds, but as clear, intelligent communication. The bioelectric translator converted his words into patterns the Valari could understand. "We are not beasts," Lee said, and every alien in the room froze. "We are people. We have names, families, dreams. We came in, peace, seeking friendship among the stars." The effect was immediate and devastating. Curator Zalthes dropped her bio-tablet. Dr. Kethmiran stepped backward in shock. Admiral Vexitar stared at the humans with growing horror as he realized what his people had done. "My name is Lee Hyun," the captain continued. "I am the commander of the Earth vessel Harmony. These are my crew members, Dr. Park So-young, Engineer Oh Jin-woo, Commander Kim Tae-ho, and Pilot Choi Mi-ran. We are explorers and scientists, not animals." Chaos erupted in the observation deck. Some aliens refused to believe what they were hearing. Others began to understand the magnitude of their mistake. They had not captured clever beasts. They had kidnapped the crew of a peaceful exploration vessel. Admiral Vextar found his voice first. "This is impossible. You are classified as Class 7 primitive beasts. The Galactic Council does not make errors." "Apparently it does," Dr. Park said, her voice clear through the translator. "We are an intelligent species just like you. We have art, science, philosophy, and dreams of exploring the galaxy in peace." The implications hit Vextar like a physical blow. If humans were truly intelligent, then his people had committed an act of war against a spacefaring species. They had kidnapped diplomats and held them as zoo animals. The approaching human ship was not a pack of beasts seeking their captured members. It was a rescue mission that could easily become a military response. Dr. Kethmiran stepped forward, his bioelectric field showing patterns of deep shame. "I have been studying you for weeks," he said. "I saw the mathematics, the technology improvements, the complex social behaviors. I should have realized the truth." "You saw what you expected to see," So Young replied gently. "Your classification system made assumptions about intelligence based on your own experience. But intelligence can take many forms." Outside the station, Captain No's ship approached with weapons ready but not yet armed. She was broadcasting on all frequencies, demanding answers about the missing Harmony crew. In a few hours, she would be close enough for direct contact. The galaxy was about to discover that they had been very, very wrong about humanity. And the consequences of that discovery would reshape everything they thought they knew about intelligence, communication, and what it meant to be civilized. The news spread across the galaxy faster than anyone could have imagined. Within hours of the revelation at the Valari research station, emergency communications were being sent to every member world of the Galactic Council. The impossible had happened. A species classified as primitive beasts had revealed themselves to be fully intelligent beings. Counselor An Byung-ho stood in the council chambers on the neutral world of Nexus Prime, looking at faces that showed every emotion from shock to fear to outright denial. As Earth's newly appointed representative, he had been rushed to the council the moment the Valari reported their discovery. "This is impossible," declared Chancellor Vormek, the council's leader for the past 50 years. His species, the Thoraxians, had always prided themselves on their scientific accuracy. "Our classification protocols have been tested for millennia. We do not make mistakes about intelligence." Professor Lim Haiwan, who had accompanied Byung-ho as Earth's philosophical advisor, stepped forward. "With respect, Chancellor, perhaps the mistake was not in your methods, but in your assumptions about what intelligence looks like." The council chamber erupted in angry voices. Representatives from dozens of species began arguing at once. Some demanded immediate action to free the human prisoners. Others insisted this was some kind of elaborate deception. A few began asking uncomfortable questions about their own classification records. Arbiter Sintara, a member of the neutral Zephyrian species, called for order. Her people had no stake in the political implications of the discovery, which made her voice valuable in times of crisis. "We must examine the evidence objectively," she said. "If the humans are truly intelligent, then we face a crisis not just of politics, but of conscience." On the Valari research station, the atmosphere was tense and fearful. Admiral Vextar found himself facing the worst political crisis of his career. The approaching human ship, the Defiance, was now close enough for direct communication, and Captain No was demanding answers. "This is Captain No Yunji of the Earth vessel Defiance," came the transmission. "You are holding members of our crew without authorization. Release them immediately or face the consequences." High researcher Telvani, who had been called in to analyze the situation, studied the bioelectric translation device that Dr. Park had built. "This is remarkable technology," she admitted to Admiral Vextar. "They created this from our own systems, improving them in ways we had not considered. No animal could do this." "Then what are they?" Vextar asked, though he was beginning to fear the answer. "They are what they claim to be," Telvani said quietly. "An intelligent spacefaring species that we have gravely wronged. In the habitat, the humans waited as their fate was decided by aliens who were still struggling to accept reality. Captain Lee used the translation device to communicate with the Valari scientists, trying to help them understand the full implications of their discovery." "How many other species have you classified as beasts?" he asked Dr. Kethmiran. The alien scientist's bioelectric field showed deep distress. "Hundreds," he admitted, "maybe thousands over the centuries." "And how many of them might actually be intelligent?" Kethmiran could not answer. The possibility was too terrible to consider. If they had been wrong about humans, they could have been wrong about many others. Entire civilizations might have been dismissed as primitive animals simply because they did not communicate in ways the Council recognized. Engineer Oh Jin-woo continued working on the station's systems, but now openly, with the permission of fascinated Valari engineers. His insights into their technology were revolutionary, showing approaches they had never considered. "Your biomechanical integration is incredible," he told them through the translator. "But you have been thinking about it wrong. You treat the biological and mechanical parts as separate systems. What if you thought of them as one?" The Valari engineers watched in amazement as Jin-woo demonstrated improvements to their own technology using principles they had overlooked. This was not the work of a clever animal. This was the contribution of a gifted mind approaching their problems from a completely different perspective. Meanwhile, pilot Choi Mi-ran had attracted attention for a different reason. She had begun teaching mathematics to some of the younger Valari scientists, using her dirt drawings to explain concepts that human schools taught to children. The aliens were shocked to discover that basic principles they considered advanced were elementary knowledge to humans. "Your species learns this as children?" asked one young Valari named Kolfin. "Yes," Miran replied through the translator. We believe that mathematical thinking is fundamental to understanding the universe. General Mordek, the Valari military leader, arrived at the station with a small fleet. He represented the faction that saw the human revelation as a threat, rather than an opportunity. These creatures, intelligent or not, have made our people look foolish, he declared to Admiral Vextar. We should contain this situation before it spreads further. Contain it how? Vextar asked. The humans know too much about our territory and capabilities, and if word spreads that we made such an error, other species will question our authority. We should eliminate the evidence. High Researcher Telvanni was horrified. You are talking about murdering innocent beings we wronged in the first place. I am talking about protecting Valari interests, Mordek replied coldly. The debate raged through the Valari government. Some, like Telvanni, wanted to immediately release the humans and make amends. Others, led by Mordek, saw the situation as a threat to be eliminated. Still others simply could not accept that their scientific certainty had been so completely wrong. On the approaching Defiance, Captain No prepared for the worst. Her ship was outnumbered, but human determination had overcome worse odds before. Ambassador Yun Sung-min, the diplomatic expert she had brought along, worked frantically to establish communication with reasonable Valari officials. Captain, Yun said, I am receiving communication from someone called High Researcher Telvanni. She says she wants to help resolve this peacefully. Put her through, No ordered. Telvanni's image appeared on the main screen, her bioelectric field showing patterns of regret and determination. Captain No, I am deeply sorry for what my people have done to your crew. We made a terrible mistake and now we are trying to correct it. Where are my people? No demanded. Safe for now. But there are those among my people who see your crew as a threat. You must understand, accepting that your species is intelligent means admitting that our entire classification system is flawed. The political implications are staggering. Back in the council chambers, Professor Lim raised a question that made everyone uncomfortable. If we have been wrong about humans, how many other species have we wrongly classified? How many intelligent beings have been dismissed as animals because they did not fit our expectations? The question hung in the air like a poison cloud. Counselor An presented data that Earth's scientists had prepared, showing patterns of behavior among supposedly primitive species that might actually indicate intelligence. Tool use, complex social structures, mathematical concepts expressed in non-traditional ways. The Kepler mammals of Rigel 7 show counting abilities and problem-solving skills, An said. The crystalline formations on Tau Ceti display coordinated responses to stimuli. The deep-sea networks of Proxima Centauri b create complex patterns that might be language. Chancellor Vormek felt his certainty crumbling. These are coincidences, patterns we are reading into random behavior. That is exactly what you said about humans, Professor Lim replied gently. The implications were becoming clear to everyone in the chamber. If the Council had been wrong about one species, they could be wrong about many. The galaxy might be full of intelligent life that they had dismissed, ignored, or even enslaved because it did not look like their idea of civilization. On the research station, the crisis was coming to a head. General Mordek had convinced several other military commanders that the humans represented a threat that needed to be eliminated. But Telvanni and her supporters were equally determined to protect them. Captain Lee, watching the growing tension among his captors, made a decision. Using the bioelectric translator, he addressed all the Valari in the facility. We know you are divided about what to do with us, he said. Some of you want to help us, others see us as a threat. But we are not your enemy. We came seeking friendship, and that offer still stands. Dr. Park added her voice. We understand that accepting our intelligence threatens your worldview. But truth is more important than comfort. If you can admit you were wrong about us, you can learn to recognize intelligence in many forms. And if you can do that, Engineer O said, imagine what we could accomplish together. Your biomechanical technology combined with our engineering approaches could revolutionize both our civilizations. The words carried weight because they came not from politicians or diplomats but from the victims themselves, offering forgiveness and cooperation instead of anger and revenge. High researcher Telvanni felt something shift in the station's atmosphere. The humans were not behaving like defeated prisoners or dangerous threats. They were acting like the intelligent, peaceful beings they claimed to be, even while imprisoned by those who had wronged them. The galaxy stood at a crossroads. 6 months had passed since the galaxy learned that humans could speak. The changes were greater than anyone could have imagined. On Nexus Prime, the rebuilt Galactic Council met in chambers that had been expanded to accommodate dozens of new species. Beings who had once been classified as primitive beasts but were now recognized as intelligent civilizations. Director Kang Do-hyun stood before the assembly of new voices, watching representatives from 47 newly recognized species take their seats for the first time. As head of the Interspecies Communication Institute, he had helped develop the protocols that made this historic moment possible. The institute itself was a marvel of cooperation. Built on a neutral world between human and Valari space, it brought together scientists from across the galaxy to study the countless ways intelligence could manifest. What they had discovered was both humbling and amazing. Dr. Bae Soo-jin, the institute's leading researcher, presented her latest findings to the assembly. Intelligence is not a single thing, she explained through the new universal translation system. It is like a symphony with many different instruments. We have found mathematical intelligence expressed through crystal formation patterns, emotional intelligence communicated through chemical releases, and tactical intelligence shown through coordinated movement of what we once thought were simple organisms. In the audience, Ambassador Rivtan listened with wonder. 6 months ago, his people had been classified as hive insects because they communicated through pheromone releases and moved in coordinated groups. Now they were recognized as one of the galaxy's most sophisticated civilizations, with a collective intelligence that operated on principles no individual species had ever imagined. Fleet Admiral John Kyung-soo watched the proceedings from the human delegation area. As head of Earth's rapidly growing space fleet, he had witnessed the transformation of humanity from unknown primitives to respected members of galactic society. But more than that, he had seen how the revelation about human intelligence had changed everything. The Valari Empire had undergone the most dramatic changes of all. High researcher Telvanni, now serving as Prime Minister, had led her people through a complete restructuring of their government and scientific institutions. The old certainties were gone, replaced by humility and a genuine desire to understand the universe as it truly was. The hardest part, Telvanni had told Admiral Jian during a recent diplomatic meeting, was admitting that we had been wrong about so much for so long. But once we accepted that, everything became possible. General Mordek's faction had attempted a military coup when the extent of the changes became clear, but they had been stopped not by force but by their own people. Valari citizens, educated about the true nature of intelligence, had refused to support leaders who wanted to maintain the old prejudices. Captain Lee Hyun, now an admiral himself, commanded a joint exploration fleet that included ships from a dozen different species. The bridge of his flagship was a testament to interspecies cooperation, with crew members who communicated through sound, bioelectric fields, chemical signals, and methods that were still being discovered. Admiral called his communications officer, a young Valari named Zeptal. We are receiving signals from the Andromeda sector. The patterns match the profile for coordinated intelligence. Lee smiled. Each new discovery validated the principles that Dr. Park had established. Intelligence was everywhere, waiting to be recognized by those willing to look beyond their own assumptions. Dr. Park So-young had become something of a legend throughout the galaxy. Her bioelectric translation device had evolved into a universal communication system that could recognize and interpret dozens of different intelligence patterns. More importantly, her work had established the theoretical framework for understanding non-traditional consciousness. She now worked from the Institute's main laboratory, surrounded by equipment that would have seemed impossible just a year before. Crystalline computers that processed information through harmonic vibrations, biomechanical interfaces that translated chemical communications, and quantum processors that handled mathematical concepts expressed through dimensional manipulation. The key insight, she often told her students, is that intelligence is not about being like us. It is about recognizing patterns, solving problems, and creating meaning. These can happen in ways we never imagined. Engineer Oh Jin-woo had revolutionized Valari technology and been revolutionized by it in return. Working with alien scientists, he had developed hybrid systems that combined human engineering intuition with Valari biomechanical integration. The results were technologies that neither species could have created alone. His latest project was a starship design that grew rather than being built, using principles borrowed from the newly recognized Treant Collective, beings who had been dismissed as unusually organized plants until their mathematical communications through root networks were finally understood. Pilot Choi Mi-ran had become Captain Choi, commanding her own exploration vessel in the Outer Rim territories. Her ship, the Harmony's Dream, was designed specifically for first contact missions with potentially intelligent species. The name honored both the original mission that had started everything and the hope that future contacts would go more smoothly. On this particular day, Captain Choi was investigating reports of unusual activity in a previously unexplored system. The signals were unlike anything in the Institute's databases, harmonic patterns that seemed to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Captain called her science officer, a member of the resonance choir species who communicated through musical tones. The patterns are becoming clearer. I believe we are observing a form of intelligence that operates through space-time manipulation. Choi felt the familiar excitement of discovery. Begin first contact protocols, and remember, expect the unexpected. Back on Earth, the changes were just as dramatic. The planet had become a center of galactic diplomacy and scientific exchange. Students from across the galaxy came to study at human universities, while human scholars traveled to learn from civilizations that had been exploring the stars for millennia. The irony was not lost on anyone. Humanity, the species that had been dismissed as primitive beasts, had become the bridge that connected the galaxy's diverse forms of intelligence. Their experience of being misunderstood had given them unique insight into recognizing intelligence in others. Professor Lim Hae-won had established the Galaxy Ethics Institute, where philosophers from hundreds of species worked together to develop new frameworks for interspecies relations. The old assumptions about superior and inferior civilizations were being replaced by understanding of different but equal forms of consciousness. We have learned, Professor Lim wrote in her latest paper, that intelligence is not a ladder with some species higher than others. It is more like a vast garden, with different forms of consciousness blooming in ways that complement and enrich each other. The Galactic Council had been completely restructured. Instead of a hierarchy based on technological advancement, it now operated as a true democracy, where each intelligent species had an equal voice. Chancellor Vormek had resigned in shame, but his replacement, Chancellor Keth Mirren, the former researcher who had first recognized human intelligence, was determined to ensure such mistakes never happened again. The new council's first major initiative was the Great Survey, a galaxy-wide effort to re-examine every species that had been classified as non-intelligent. The results were staggering. In the first month alone, they identified 17 new civilizations that had been completely overlooked. One of the most remarkable discoveries was on the ocean world of Aquatica Prime. What had been classified as unusual coral formations were actually a collective intelligence that had been trying to communicate for centuries through the arrangement of reef structures. When finally recognized, they proved to have developed advanced mathematics and philosophy through their patient, millennial-long thought processes. On the gas giant Stratos, clouds that had been dismissed as weather patterns were revealed to be vast aerial beings that communicated through atmospheric pressure changes and thought on a planetary scale. Their perspective on time and space was so different from other species that it took months just to establish basic communication. The discovery that touched hearts throughout the galaxy was the star singers of the Vega system. These energy beings existed in the space between planets, creating complex symphonies through gravitational manipulation. They had been composing music for thousands of years, waiting for someone to listen. When their songs were finally recognized as language, They wept tears of pure light. Admiral Lee often reflected on how much had changed since that first disastrous contact with the Volari. The galaxy had awakened to the reality that intelligence came in countless forms, each offering unique perspectives on existence. Wars between species were becoming rare, as civilizations learned to value diversity rather than fear it. The transformation was not without challenges. Some species struggled to accept the new reality, clinging to old prejudices and hierarchies. Others found it difficult to communicate even with the best translation technology. But progress continued, driven by curiosity and hope rather than fear and dominance.